Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start on our cultural diversity unit. So cultural diversity is very important in healthcare. So we're going to go over some of those reasons why. So we need to understand first the definition of culture, race, and ethnicity. So culture is your beliefs, your values, attitudes, languages, symbols, rituals, behaviors, beliefs, any type of customs that are common to a particular group of people, and they're passed down from one generation to the next, okay? So anything with your values, traditions, customs, anything like that, that is generally particular to one group of people and passed from one generation to the next is considered our culture. So our race is our physical characteristics, okay? So our race is our physical characteristics, what you actually look like. And ethnicity is a combination of culture and race, okay? So, a commonality among individuals or groups is called culture, of course. It's your basic beliefs, your traditions, your moral and ethical codes of behavior, language and communication styles, customs reflected in our feasts and celebrations, like do you have a huge Thanksgiving feast? Do you celebrate Christmas? Do you celebrate Independence Day, 4th of July? Do you celebrate Cinco de Mayo? Different types of clothing, grooming rituals that you do. So those are all considered part of your culture. Ethnicity, we said, was a combination of your culture and your race. So members of an ethnic group share a common heritage but may not practice all the beliefs of that group. Examples of ethnic groups: African American, Asian American, European American, Hispanic American, Middle Eastern or Arab American, Native American. Your race, again, we said, was your physical characteristics. Now, cultural assimilation. It's when members of a newly arrived cultural group change their beliefs and adopt the ways of the dominant culture. Now, years ago, we used to be called the melting pot. America was called the melting pot because everybody kind of came to America and we all just kind of got thrown into this big melting pot together. And just say if I use crayons, if I had blue crayons, red crayons, green crayons, beautiful bright yellow and orange crayons, they're all put together representing, of course, different cultural backgrounds. And we put all of those crayons in this big melting pot, what's going to happen? You're going to end up with a pukey, yucky, brown, ugly crayon. Okay, so that is not what we want to consider. We want to be known more as a salad bowl, meaning the lettuce and the croutons and the carrots and the bell pepper and the ranch dressing and the cheese. Each of those are individual, just like those crayons were, but when they're put in that big salad bowl, they don't melt and change into one big yucky brown thing. They are still individual in that salad bowl. So they're a group, we're all a group, but you can pull those carrots out, you can pull those croutons out, you can pull that cheese out, and it's still cheese. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make us all the same blah stuff. So we want to be called recognized as that salad bowl analogy, okay? Where differences in each person's culture is appreciated and it's respected. I don't have to agree with all of your cultures, but as a human being, I need to appreciate those and respect those. Okay, so acculturation means that you are learning the beliefs and behaviors of a dominant culture. Doesn't mean you're taking them on, but you understand the cultures of where you're at. Don't have to agree with them, don't have to do them, but you learn about them and you know what they are. And a lot of times people do use assimilation and acculturation in the same terms, but we'll go over that for the test later, okay? Sensitivity is just what it means, the ability to recognize and appreciate personal characteristics of others. as I said before, you do not have to agree with someone's beliefs, but you have to respect their beliefs and be sensitive to their culture. Bias is a preference that prevents impartial judgment. Now, let me give you an example. I am the HOSA advisor, or one of the HOSA advisors here at East Upland High School. So if I have some students in my class that are in HOSA and some that are not in HOSA, if I give the students that are in our class in HOSA an unfair advantage, or maybe I prefer them over an assignment over somebody else that's not in HOSA, that's a bias. I'm biased towards those kids because they're in my HOSA club. Okay, so I'm giving them an impartial judgment. Okay, I'm judging other kids because they're not in HOSA, and we don't want to do that. Ethnocentric is when someone believes in the supremacy of their own ethnic group. They believe that their values and beliefs are better than others. Now, you may believe that yours is better, and that's okay, because all of us are going to say, well, mine's okay. You're not going to insult your own cultural beliefs and believe in someone else's, then you would change your beliefs. But someone that pushes that to the limit would be someone that was considered ethnocentric, like considering that everything that you're doing in your culture is just stupid and you shouldn't do that, and mine is the perfect thing. So I think of Adolf Hitler when I think of someone that is ethnocentric. He believed that what he believed in was right and everything else was wrong. Okay, so we don't need to be that way. Prejudice just actually means to prejudge. Don't prejudge somebody. You've heard the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, and you can't do that because that cover might be worn and tattered and torn and messed up. But once you start reading that book, it's an amazing book. So don't prejudge somebody. If you have a friend that has had Miss Amy Daniels as a teacher before, and that friend absolutely hated me, thought I was the worst teacher ever, please don't come in here and think that I'm the worst teacher ever. You make your decision on your own. Just as in reverse, if I have another teacher that talks to me and says, Sue Jones is one of your students coming up, and I had her last semester, and she was terrible. She would never do her work. She was extremely disrespectful. I don't need to judge you based on what another teacher tells me. We need to meet each other, we need to learn each other, and we need to make our judgments for ourselves, okay? So don't prejudge people based on things that you've heard or seen. Stereotyping means that you are lumping somebody together. Like, I'm assuming that all jocks are dumb. Well, they're not. Our athletes are pretty dang smart. Stereotyping. I believe that all blondes are dingy and they're crazy. That's simply not true. So don't lump people together based on some of their characteristics. Okay? When we talk about holistic care, and we've talked about this a little bit before, it's caring for the whole well-being of the person, not just an individual part of that person, not just the physical aspect of that person, but the mental, social, emotional, physical well-being all go together, okay? So that is what holistic care means, to care for the well-being of the whole person. Now, when we're talking about family organization, a nuclear family is mom, dad, and kids. That's who lives in your house, mom, dad, kids. That is considered a nuclear family. An extended family is when you have a mom, a dad, some kids, maybe grandma lives there, maybe mom's brother lives there. So it is just what it says. It extends past that nuclear family. It's past just mom, dad, kids. Okay? There's other family members that live with you. Okay? So we need to know the difference in that. Nuclear is just mom, dad, kids. And the extended family, just as it says, extends past that nuclear family. Like I said, maybe grandma, Uncle Joe lives with you, your cousin lives with you, something like that, okay? Now, when we're talking about nuclear or extended families, I want you to think about these cultural groups: Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Polish Americans, Italian Americans, African Americans, and British Americans. What do you think each of those are? Extended families or nuclear families? So, the Hispanic Americans typically are extended family. You have more than mom, dad, and kids living in that household. Same thing with Native Americans. They are very open and extended with their families. Polish Americans and Italian Americans are classified as nuclear. African Americans are typically extended family. British Americans are nuclear. Mom, dad, kids. So now we're talking about family organizations. So I need for you to remember that patriarchal, and if you think of papa or patriarchal, padre, any of those terms, that means the male, or typically the father, is the head of the household. Now, it doesn't have to be the dad. What if dad has passed away and it's an uncle, or it's the oldest male son? So any family that is considered patriarchal will have the oldest male in that family as the head of that household. And in the opposite of that, we have matriarchal. Remember, mom, mama, madre, whatever. That just means that the oldest female in the home is considered the head of that household. So you've got to know the difference in those two. Patriarchal is the oldest male or dad, and matriarchal is the oldest female, or typically mom. Now, language in our country. The dominant language in the United States, of course, is English, but the percentage, and that usually the 20% pops up. What percentage of the United States population speaks a language other than English at home? And that's about 20%. So you don't think that's a large number, but it does affect a lot of us. And healthcare workers have got to ask questions to determine if your patient is able to communicate. You don't want to just ask yes or no questions and your patient just shakes their head. You got to make sure that you can communicate with that patient. The best thing as healthcare workers that you can do is learn some Spanish. You will be in contact with a lot of Spanish-speaking patients, and you need to be able to communicate with your patient. Now, is that saying that you need to be fluent in Spanish? No, I don't expect anybody to do that. It would be a great thing if you did, but you need to be able to ask important questions, even if you don't ask it perfectly the way a Hispanic patient would, ask that question. If you need to know if your patient is allergic to any medications, which is a very important question. Allergias, learn that one word. Allergias, tiene allergias. I think that means, do you have any allergies? Dolor, pain. If you're asking your patient, do you have any pain? Ask them where, don't they? You don't have to be able to speak fluently, but if you can ask a few words to ask the important questions that your patient needs. If they're hurting, where are they hurting? Do they have any allergies? Those are very important things that we need to learn as healthcare providers. And also, if we don't speak their language, please get an interpreter. Please don't allow a family member to interpret. That's a bad idea. Okay? Bad idea to allow family members to translate, because sometimes they don't say exactly what you want them to say. They kind of do some, what am I trying to say? They do some changing things around, and they evaluate what the patient needs to hear or doesn't need to hear, and we don't need that. We need that interpreter to say everything that we need them to say. When you're talking with patients that are non-English speaking, speak slowly, use simple words. A lot of times people can get it if you're slow with simple words. Use gestures or pictures. Smile and touch. They're very important. That nonverbal communication. You don't have to speak louder if your patient doesn't speak English. They're not deaf. Okay? Learn a few essential words and phrases, which we just talked about. Personal space and touch. Close contact versus distant contact. Sometimes you just don't need to get in somebody's bubble. Okay? Don't get right up in somebody's personal space. You need to be aware of that with your patients. Eye contact is extremely important. shows that you're listening, it shows interest, it shows trustworthiness. But there are some cultures that feel as though direct eye contact is a sign of disrespect. So we need to be aware of those, okay? If you have a patient that's looking down all the time,